promised last week that today we'll sort of round off our iyunim in the Aseres HaDibros with a sekira on all the Aseres HaDibros, and to see if we're right that the Aseres HaDibros were there to give us the constitutional principles of a Mamleches Koyanim v'Goy Kodesh, that Aseres HaDibros, each one of them has a whole life besides the mitzvah aspect, but because of the ideas which they plant in us, that they could be the yesodas on which a Mamleches Koyanim v'Goy Kodesh is to be based, to round that off, since we've gone through each one of the Aseres HaDibros individually. So in Yetz Hashem we'll get around to that. And the emes is that it's Min HaShamayim, that Dafka this week is Rosh Chanan, where we get to the Aseres HaDibros again. So the Eon in the Aseres HaDibros will really be also a me'en of the Parshas HaShavua. And also for another reason, which we'll see in a few moments. But before we start on that, there's just a little piece of something which I want to share with you. I heard once this Yesod, and I believe it's a very important Yesod, and it's a Yesod which is Lemaisa for us who have gone through Tisha B'Av this week. So the Loshen of the tour in Arachayim Siman Tov Chof Ches is it talks about the Haftorahs over there. And so what he says is like this: Mibereishis ad Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, from Parshas Bereishis until we get to Shiva Osa B'Tammuz, Maftirem Me'inyan HaPashiyos Doime B'Doime. The Haftorah is chosen on the basis of a similarity which it has to what was read in the Parsha. But Misham Ve'elech Lefi HaZman or Lefi HaMa'oira. From then on, that from Shiva Osa B'Tammuz onwards, the Haftorahs are not chosen on the basis of what's happening in the Parsha, but they're chosen by the time of the year in which they're being said and what happened. Talta de Puranusa. First comes the three Haftorahs of Puronius between Shiva Osa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Then comes the Sheva de Nechemta, the famous 7 Haftorahs of Nechama, which begin with Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, this Shabbos. And then V'tata de Tiyufta, and then we have the Haftorahs of Tshuva, which have to do with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Aseres Yemei Tshuva. And that brings us all the way till Simchas Torah, and then we start again from Bereishis. So the Haftorahs are chosen up to Shiva Osa B'Tammuz on the similarity to the Pasha, and from then on as a Me'ein HaMa'oira. I heard once a brother-in-law of mine, he's not alive anymore, was a very choshev Yid, but at an occasion there was somebody who had lost his wife. It was a very, very big tragedy, and it was Shabbos Nachamu that the Olam got together to be with him a little bit. And my brother-in-law said at that time he brought this tour. That's how I know this tour. I know the Bokian tour, but I know this tour from what he said. And he asked this very, very reasonable question, and that is, what does it mean, Me'ein HaMa'oira? That the 3 of Puranusa, the 3 punishment Haftorahs in the 3 weeks between Shiva Osa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, that we understand, though that's a period in the year when there was a terrible Puronius, and that was between the breaking the walls of the city and destroying the Beis HaMikdash. Oh, that's Me'ein HaMa'oira. From Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur to Simchas Torah, that the Haftorah is the Haftorah of Shabbos Shuva, that's Me'ein HaMa'oira, because that's the time of Tshuva. But the Shiva de Nechemta, how can you call them Me'ein HaMa'oira? Me'ein HaMa'oira is the Ma'oira means what happened, that the Haftorahs, or wherever you use the word Me'ein HaMa'oira, it means that it's influenced by what happened during that period. Now, what nechama happened during that period? There wasn't any nechama during that period. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, there were the 3 weeks between Shiva Osa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, and then Nebuch, the Beis HaMikdash was burned, and we were in Golus, and there was certainly no kind of nechama. And where in history has there been a nechama during this period? So he asked very stark, he said, like, where is the Me'ein HaMa'ora? If the Torah would have said, we don't insist on a similarity to the Pasha, but we lane 7 of Nechemta, okay, so we do. Why? Then we can think that figure it out ourselves perhaps. But he says beferish that the Mahalach is that we go with the Zman and the Ma'ora. Yeah, Mishom be'elech lefi ha-Zman or lefi ha-Ma'ora Talte de Boronius for Sheva de Nechemta. So he calls the Sheva de Nechemta as a Me'ein HaMa'ora. So he timed that it must be that in the Chayma of the Boronius itself lies a Nechama. We know that what Chazal said, I don't remember whether he said that, but I'll say that now. You know, we all know the Chazal, that when the Goyim broke into the Beis HaMikdash, so they went to the Kodesh Kadoshim, and they saw the Kruvim in each other's embrace, Amoin and Moyav. They went in there, and then they carried the Paroiches, or the Kruvim, whatever it was, which Kruvim they saw, and they carried them through the streets, and they made fun of the Yidden. Look, they've got erotic figures in their Kodesh Kadoshim. Here they're preaching the whole time Kedusha and all kinds of things like that, and look what they have in their Beis HaMikdash. They have in their Beis HaMikdash these figures in each other's embrace. So forget about Ammon and Moav. They are what they are. But we have to ask ourselves, we know, Chazal tell us, that the Kruvim, by their relationship to one another, indicated what our relationship was with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So therefore, when we were not on good terms, Ki'ilu Keviyochol, with the Rebbeinu Shalom, so then they looked away from each other. And then, as we became back again into a good relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom, so then they started facing each other again. Oh, this was at the moment of the Churban. At the moment of the Churban, why would they be in each other's embrace? Zetman, that in the Churban Gufa lies a Nechama. In the Churban lies a Nechama. And I think that that's really indicated in Tisha B'Av Gufa, that Korah Moed, we give it a din of Yontif also. In a way, it was a blessing that the Rebbeinu Shalom took away the Beis HaMikdash and burnt it to the ground. Why was that a blessing? Because as long as, Chazal say that Kim Chetchina Tochan, that by the time Nebuchadnezzar came and burnt down the Beis HaMikdash, it had no Shechina anymore. The Shechina had gone, so all that was left was a gorgeous building. So who cares? So the building had no chashivas, and Memele it was burnt. But you have to understand that the presence of such a building would have been a terrible thing for us. We would have gotten used to honoring an empty shell. We would have lost our sense of what is to be honored and what is not to be honored. Kommt doch aus that in the Churban itself lies a Nechama, that the Rebbeinu Shalom took away this fake Beis HaMikdash, which had become a fake Beis HaMikdash the minute that the Shechina went away from it, and it was all already like ground flour which he ground again. It was already destroyed. Who needs a building? And so the Rebbeinu Shalom not only, so he said, okay, now I'll burn it. The pshat is that it was a terrific chesed to take that away from us. I tied it to the Bachim that the vod is that in a way we see, I don't want to spend so much time on it now, we want to get to the Aseres HaDibros, but the emes is we see a chayma on Asor B'Teves more than on Tisha B'Av, because in Asor B'Teves, or maybe I've talked about this once before, the Asor B'Teves, we know that the halacha is an avudram that can't fall out on Shabbos according to our calendar. But if it would fall out on Shabbos, we would fast on Asor B'Teves. Why would we fast on Asor B'Teves? Because it says in Yecheskel, Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh, so just like on Yom Kippur we fast even if it comes out on Shabbos, so on Asor B'Teves we would fast even if it comes out on Shabbos. On Tisha B'Av we are doicha. So you see there's a chayma in Asor B'Teves more than on Tisha B'Av. And I hold that it's a more chomadik tragedy. What was Asor B'Teves? They made a siege around Yerushalayim. But Yerushalayim is supposed to be Kimitzion Teitzei Soyrod V'Hashem Yerushalayim. The ashpor of Kedusha has to come out of Yerushalayim to spread around the whole world. So Yerushalayim with a siege around it, where nothing can come out, is an aberration. It's an aberrant Yerushalayim. So that's a much more horrible in a way chilul of the Beis Hamikdash than the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, because the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash doesn't interfere with its integrity. You either have it or you don't have it. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. So, but when it'll be built again the way it's supposed to be. But Yerushalayim surrounded, that's an aberration, in a way that's worse even than Tisha B'Av. And Asor B'Teves would not be Nitzen, it would be Doiche Shabbos. We would fast even on Shabbos, even though on Tisha B'Av we don't. So on Tisha B'Av Be'etzem contains in itself a little bit of Nechama. And that is why at the moment, after, when the Goyim already came into the Kodesh Kadoshim, so the Kruvim were already in each other's embrace, the Rebbe Shalom said, okay, we are friends again. We've gone through this terrible Churban. So now you know we are ready now to start building. I'm ready to start, we can start tomorrow. You have to come back. Well, of course, we missed countless opportunities, I guess, and we're still in Golos. But the Vort is that in the Churban lies a Nechama, and that's an important thing to know, and that is why I wanted to start off the Shir tonight with that. So now we are by the Aseres HaDibros. We want to sort of bid an official goodbye to this sugya of the Aseres HaDibros, and as I said before, the fact that it's right now in Voice Chanan where we have the Aseres HaDibros again, so it's just the right moment to sort of give a farewell glance at the whole sugya. So let's read the few psukim in Voice Chanan in Perek Dalet, which lead up to the posuk, which is so very, very important for us. Let's start at Sheni. Re'ei limadati eschem chukim u'mishpotim kasher tzivani Hashem Elokai lasos kein b'kerev ha'oretz asher atem boim shomo l'rishto. We're going to Eretz Yisrael. You're going to have chukim u'mishpotim to keep there. And what are they? Are they oil? Are they a nuisance? Are they something which is hard to keep? U'shematem v'asisem כי היא חוכמתכם ובינתכם לעיני העמים אשר ישמעון את כל החוקים האלה ואמרו רק עם חוכם ונבון הגוי הגדול הזה כי מי גוי גדול אשר לא אלוהים קרובים אליו כשם אלוקינו בכל קוראינו אליו ומי גוי גדול אשר לא חוקים ומשפטים צדיקים ככל התורה הזאת אשר נושן לפניכם היום. And then the pasuk goes on, Rak Yishomer Lecho Shema Nashecho Ma'od Pen Tishkach Es HaDvorim Asher Roe Einecho Pen Yosuru Milvavcho Kol Yemei Chayecha V'Haidatem Levonecho Lifnei Vodecho. What? Yom Asher Amadeto Lifnei Hashem Elokecho B'chayrev Ve'emoi Hashem Elai Hakeliyas Ha'am V'Ashmi'em Es Dvorai Asher Yilmedun Liyiru Oisi Kol HaYomim Asher Heim Chayim Alo Adomo Ve'es B'neihem Lo Yilamedon. And that is the mitzvah, according to the Ramban, is a mitzvah loisaseh and a mitzvah aseh. There's a mitzvah loisaseh that we're not allowed to forget Ma'amet HaSinai, and it's mitzvah aseh that we have to pass on the Messiah to our children and to our grandchildren. Just want to read to you the shtickle Ramban on this. It's a longer Ramban, but I'll just read a few sentences. Ki kasher Oma shenizoher b'chol hamitzvos v'nishma chukim v'mishpatim la'asasam. Remember, those were the psukim before we came to this pasuk of Rak Yishomer Lecho. Choza v'oma rak ani mazhircho ma'od lehishomer v'lishmoa atzmecho ma'od ma'od lizko me'ayin bo elechu hamitzvos shlo tishkach ma'amet hasinai mikol hadvarim asher ro'u shom einecho hakoilos, the thunder, Valapidim, and the lightnings, as Kavoida, as Godlai, Udvarov Asher Shomata Shomitecho Esh. Don't forget them. Don't forget them. V'taidia kol hadvarim asher ro'u einecho b'ma'amat hanichbad ahu levonecho livnei vonecho ad olam. Make this the Yerusha that you give to your children. Give it to your children. Give it to your grandchildren. This should be in our bones. It has to be a constant a part of us. Upirush hatam. Why? Ki Hashem also, listen now to what we're saying. Why did we have this Aseres HaDibros? Upirush hatam ki Hashem also hamamat hahu k'dei shetilmadu leyiru oisoi kol hayomim v'es b'neichem tilamedon l'doros olam. He wanted you to be Yirei Shamayim. Ki Hashem also hamamat hahu k'dei shetilmadu leyiru oisoi kol hayomim. We have to be Yireim of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that is the one precious Yerusha that we can pass on to our children. In Kain asu atem kocha va'al tishkachu oso. Don't forget them. That is what it is. That the Aseres HaDibros are there, the Mamet HaSinai, with all the attendant thunder and lightning and koilos and rokim and the whole thing, that the Rebbeinu Shalom was mamish there in our midst. All of that is there in order to make us into God-fearing people. That's unbelievable. And now let's think through these Aseres HaDibros, the way we explained them over the past 9 weeks or whatever it was. So to try and figure out, Taka, what these Aseres HaDibros in their totality teach us. In other words, what kind of a nation does the Rebbeinu Shalom envision by giving us these 10 hints, maybe more than hints, to tell us the values which are going to be the underlying values of that nation. Nachamol, we know that Aseres HaDibros are mitzvahs. There are more than 10 mitzvahs, either 14 according to the Rambam, 11 according to the Ramban, but there are more. It's not 10 mitzvahs, it's 10 dibros. So dibros has to be something over and above the mitzvahs. So what are they? So let's now see in the klolius of the Aseres HaDibros what kind of a society is envisioned. Onoichi v'lo yilecha. The first thing is, remember we saw in Onoichi, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Rashi brings it in Beha, Shtori Koidem. We are avodim of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Onoichi Hashem Elokei Rosh v'tzisicho me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeis avodim. I have a shtar avdos on you. You are my avodim. All the limitations of Eved Ivri, that a Yid can't make another Yid into a real Eved, you mustn't work avodas perach, you mustn't sell him on a platform, all these things which preserve the dignity of the Jew, and he doesn't become a full Eved, is only because we are already a full Eved. We are already a full Eved of the Rebbeinu Shalom. He took us out of Mitzrayim, and with that we became his avodim. And that's who we are. So number one, Yesod number one of the Aseres HaDibros is that we are indentured to the Rebbeinu Shalom. We are his servants, we are his slaves. He can do avodas perach with us. He can be mevazeh us if we have to go in the service of the Rebbeinu Shalom and become mevuzah, and it's embarrassing, and that's what we have to do. We are his avodim. That's the first yesod. You want to be a mamlechas kayan and v'goy kodesh. Realize that you're not your balabas. You have one balabas, and that's the Rebbeinu Shalom. And your entire life, 24 hours a day, 7/24, or 24/7, I don't know which way you say it, you're an ever to the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what a Mamlechas Kohen and V'goy Kodesh looks like. You know, I sound so frum over here when I say these things. I have as much shaykhus to these Yesodas as a chveisvas. But I'm just saying over what I think the theory is over here, like what the Torah is telling us. If I as an individual fall short of that, that's my tzara. But at least we have to know what it should be. So that is the Anochi Hashem Elokei Rosh v'tzisicho me'eretz Mitzrayim. Then lo yilechu Elohim acherim al ponei. Remember, we learned from Rav Wolbe, who was much better us, this Yesod, that Avodah Zorah shel Avraham Avinu was Abba Me'ez Prokim, because by him Avodah Zorah wasn't only Avodah Zorah. You're not allowed to bow down to a graven image. That's not all it is. That's much more than that. That's what is that any foreign value to which we give a credence, to which we say this is important to me in my life. That by Avraham Avinu was also an Avodah Zorah. Anything which was Zorah from the Rebbeinu Shalom, anything which deflected his concentration and his thinking from the Rebbeinu Shalom, that was an Avodah Zorah, 400 prokim Avodah Zorah. How do I deal with my attraction to this thing, or my attraction to that thing? Of course, every doy has its own Yetzer Haros. I don't suppose that Avraham Avinu followed the football team of the Amorim and the Canaanim, but whatever it was that the civilization, the culture within which he lived was machshev, that became an avodah zarah. So what is not only Anochi Hashem Elokecha, you are my servants because I took you out of Mitzrayim, but my servitude demands a single-minded adherence to only one Yesod, and that is the Yesod of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And all foreign things deflect you from that. You're not allowed to do that. That is also a form of Avodah Zarah. Then you come to Lo Sisa Hashem Hashem Elokecha Lashav. Remember, we learned that the meaning of a shvua is that when you say Ani Nishba, I am B7, if you remember what I said at the time, it means I'm making this statement in full awareness that the Rebbeinu Shalom is standing there and listening to me. So that is the Dibra which tells us that we are never alone. I don't know whether we talked about that, but isn't that an interesting thing? You tell a guy, he says, "Oh, you have a Shulchan Aruch, that's your constitution." Like, let's hear, what does it start off with? Oh, it starts off with that I have to put my right sock on before my left. What are you talking about? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and entitled. I don't know this Nusach, I'm still British. But to life, liberty, and pursuit of it. That's the way to start a constitution. You start a constitution by telling me which sock you should put on first. What kind of nonsense is that? The Torah says what the Ramo says, Shivi Si Hashem Negdi Tomit. The Rebbeinu Shalom is a presence. The Rebbeinu Shalom is a real presence in our house. And if you live in the house with the king and you live in the room with the king, you'd better know what the protocols are and which sock goes on first. So that's the Yesod. I'm an Eved Hashem. I am completely focused on being an Eved Hashem, and I am constantly aware that I'm living in the palace of the king. You know where the palace of the king is? In your bedroom. That is where the palace of the king is, because the Rebbeinu Shalom is there. No, and from there we get to Shabbos. So we now remember we talked about this last source for Shomrim Israel as Shabbos, last source as Shabbos. We learned the Sefurna that last source as Shabbos is that the way we deal on Shabbos, the kind of Shabbos that we experience, is the Shabbos which we are making our Olam Haba, the Yom Shekula Shabbos. Last source as Shabbos, Shomrim Israel as Shabbos. They should keep Shabbos, because by keeping Shabbos, they are manufacturing an endless Shabbos. Those of you who felt Shabbos now in the middle of the summer, with summertime, it gets late, night is at 9:30, 10, I remember in Gateshead, during double summertime after the war, so night was at 11:30, quarter to 12, I don't know what it's like over there nowadays. So, eternity is a very long Shabbos. And that Shabbos we're manufacturing on Shabbos. The Teretz is Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba. It's literally Me'ein Olam Haba, because on Shabbos it's our chunk of Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh, and the Rebbeinu Shalom sits back and says, "Okay, let me see how you relate to Olam Haba. Do you have the ears to hear what Olam Haba is saying to you? Do you have the eyes to see what Olam Haba is showing to you? Do you know the language that's spoken in Olam Haba? Let's see from your Shabbos." So the Mamlechas Kohen and V'Goy Kodesh are every Shabbos put in front of this experience. Put in front of this experience to experience Olam Haba. No, that's your ultimate context. Can you handle it? Have you educated yourself? Have you lived a life? Are you living a life which enables you to experience that? And then we get to Kibbutz Avoim. And Kibbutz Avoim, remember that the Ramban talks about the Yesod, that the covet which is due to the Av and Aim is because they are Shutfim of the Rebbeinu Shalom, which means that I, who am the product of my parents' marriage, am also together with the Rebbeinu Shalom. It touches up who I am. It touches up who I am, and it touches up what a Yid is. You remember we discussed that the unit that was counted in Bamidbar is the Mishpachasam Lebeis Avoisam. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't count us as units. The Rebbeinu Shalom counts us as Botei Ovos. And why does the Rebbeinu Shalom count us as Botei Ovos? Because our whole Yesod is the Messiah. What we learned tonight in the Ramban. That's what I am. What am I? I am a unit. I'm a son to my father and a father to my son. And I have to pass it on to him. And I have to be mekabelet. That is who I am. I'm not an individual. That's the most, perhaps in a way, the most important dibur of the Aseres HaDibros. And the truth is, we saw that the Ramban learns that Sinov and Signov are really extensions of Kibbutz Avoim. That Sinov and Signov tell us, look, if the wife commits adultery, so he won't know who his father is. So whom is he going to be mechabed? So you see that how Yesodistic Kibbutz Avoim is, because we have to look upon ourselves not as individuals. We have to look upon ourselves as Botei Ovos. I'm a son of my father, a father of my son. That is who I am, and that is what touches itself up. Those are the first 5 Dibros. So there we have it. What a Yid is supposed to look like if he's a Mamlechtas Kayan of a Goy Kodesh. And then we get to this strange treatment of the Ramban to these, to the first 3 of the 5 letter Dibros, the Ben Odom Lechaveros, but he always finds a different extension to them. That the Loisirtzach is not only because of the cruelty that you're exercising against your victim, but you're causing the Rebbeinu Shalom a loss. Each person is unique. Remember, that's what the Ikrim said in this Pasuk in Noach, Shoifach dam ha'odam, ba'odam dama yishafech, ki b'tzelem Elokim oses ha'odam. That in the Ikrim learned, what's the pshat with b'tzelem Elokim? That in contrast to the animals, whose chashivas lies only in the mean, the individual animal has no chashivas, but perhaps each person is an individual. And when you murder somebody, you're taking away from the Rebbeinu Shalom in all the billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of people who have lived throughout the Doros. This man was unique, and his particular mix of koichos and qualities is not duplicated anywhere. You took him away from the Rebbeinu Shalom. You have to be machshav your fellow man. You have to know how choshev it is. He's a ben yochid of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Remember we talked about the Chazal that we have to be mamlechem. What do I have to be mamlechem? I have to realize that in his world he is melech and I'm only an object. We talked about that. That's the loisirtzach, the loisinov. You're mixing up. That's we learned. That's why Pasha Soita comes in Nosa right after the counting. The Ramban says over there. Why? Because since you counted the Beis Av, so we know that the unit of which Kal Yisrael, the bricks of which Kal Yisrael is built, is the Beis Av. So the Pasha of Soita gives us a mechanism to preserve the integrity of the Beis Av. And the Lois Sinaf is going to undermine that integrity. And that is why, and he won't know who his father is, so how is he going to be mechabed him? How will he be able to identify himself as a Mamlechas Kohen in the Goy Kodesh? That is totally on the Messiah, like we learned tonight in the Pasha Vos Chanan. So if he's Noyev and he doesn't know who his father is, so he's going to lose that. And you remember that the Ramban said the same thing in Lysigzoil, kidnapping, because mostly you kidnap a child, so what do? You bring him up in some different country, and again he won't know who his father is. So again you're making him lose the whole metzias of being a Yid. What is being a Yid? A Yid is being a chelik of a Beis Av. That's what a Yid is. If you kidnap him, you're going to rob him of that. Weiter noch einmal, these 3 mitzvahs, the Sirzach and the Sinov and the Sigzol, they are the chashivas of every human being. How choshev each one of us is. That's unbelievable. And we have to get used to that idea. And really to tremble when we meet somebody. We are meeting a ben yochid of the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's a very, very, very profound thing. In no way is it less demanding than the things that we saw in the first 5 Dibros, which tell us about the Rebbeinu Shalom and the way we have to relate to him. And then we come to Losane Bereacho et Shoker. Remember, we learned about the special evil of giving Eid Sheker, because Elokim Nitzov B'adas El B'Kerev Elohim Yishpad. The Rebbeinu Shalom is standing there in the Bezdin, and you know why. Remember, we learned the Ramban at the beginning of Devorim. Lo Suguru Mipnei Ish Ki HaMishpat Elokim Hu. So we learned the Ramban who says that it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's job to do mishpat, because society can't, that the whole concept of the judicial arm of government, the way we have it here in America. You have the justices, the judges in England. You have judges all over. You have judges. So the derech klal, they are the servants of the community. The community has a need for a system of justice, so they appoint judges. Perhaps it's not that way. Ki hamishpat le'elokim hu. Only the Rebbeinu Shalom can stand us in judgment. Why? Because as individuals we're too choshev to lose our identity in a community. And no community has the right to put a judge over me. Who has the right to put a judge over me? Only the Rebbeinu Shalom. And the Ban says over there, so the shoftim which do function in the courts are doing it only as shluchim of the Rebbeinu Shalom. And since they're doing it as shluchim of the Rebbeinu Shalom, if they would favor somebody because he's strong or because he's rich, they would be moyel in their shlichus. So again, it's the chashivas of the individual. That's what the five last dibros are about. The chashivas of the individual. Each individual is so choshev. So choshev. And that's what, you remember Rashi learns, Mamlechas Koyanim, Rashi says, Sorim. We're a kingdom of aristocrats. Each one of us is a melech. Each one is a melech. He's a melech in his own world. We talked about that before. So those four dibros, those four last dibros of the 6, 7, 8, and 9 are talking about the chashivas of the individual. And finally, like Sachmoid, remember we showed last week how that is based on the Yesod that the Rebbeinu Shalom gives us whatever we need, that we have what we need. She'osali kol tzorki, we say every morning. She'osali kol tzorki. And what if I've got a broken leg, chas v'sholem, or what if I don't have any money, and if I don't have all these things? What does it mean, she'osali kol tzorki? So the pshat is because that's your tzorech. There's no way in which it makes sense to covet what the other person has. If you would need it, the Rebbeinu Shalom would have given it to you. And by the same token, remember we saw the Ramban, that if you stick with Lo Sachmoid, you're not going to be mazik people. What's he going to do? I'm not chaymed, therefore I'm not mazik you. Yeah, because why are you not chaymed? Because you realize how important that everything that you have is because you need it. So then, if you have a Baal Seichel and you haven't become completely rotten, then you will know that just like everything that you have is because you need it, so everything that he has is because he needs it. So you're going to be careful not to be mazik him. So the truth is that if we take all these things together, we see what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us. He wants us to be a Mamlechas Koyanim v'Goy Kodesh. Let's stick with a Rashi on that, although the Ramban learns differently. Mamlechas Koyanim, it's a kingdom of aristocrats. Kingdom of aristocrats. And that's what we're supposed to be. But what's the mile of the aristocrat? The aristocrat has the whole world bowing in front of him. But one thing he does is he bows in front of the king. And that's what we are. And that's what the Mamlechas Kohen and the Goy Kodesh is. That we have to be mevatel ourselves to the Rebbeinu Shalom. But in order to be mevatel something worthwhile to the Rebbeinu Shalom, we first have to be somebody who is worthwhile. We have to be a sar. We have to be a unique personality. And to understand that we are a unique personality. And with all that we have within ourselves, we go and we mevatel ourselves to the Rebbeinu Shalom. If we could stell away such a society, we can all of us understand what kind of life we would have, what a beautiful life that would be. No kinder, no sacharos, no deflection from where we are supposed to be, that we would treasure every moment of learning and every moment of tefillah. I sound so stupid talking about these things because we're not holding by that. At least I'm not. But that's the way. That's the theory. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the Aseres HaDibros. And Yitz Hashem, starting from next week, we'll try and get back again into the Pashiyas.